Hey, speaking of Joseph, do you believe that Mary remained perpetually a virgin?
No, and I don't want to talk about it anymore.
You don't?
So now help me out with this question because in fact, this has come up in a new member instruction class. I've got some thoughtful people who kind of read on the edges of Lutheran stuff. They've been watching a lot of On the Line. Props to Brian Stecker for doing a great job of getting Lutheranism out there. They've really enjoyed and learned a lot from him, including, like, for instance, just by the way, his interview with Joe Rigney from last week. Great stuff, just really phenomenal. But uh, in the fringes of Lutheranism, they see things like what's this Semper Virgo stuff?
Hmm.
Or I had the question last week was the Filioque. What do we make of that? And and
Well, that
my
one's
answer was
easier.
it's in the creed. Yeah, it's in the creed. So, but the Semper Virgo is a little bit is a little bit trickier for me because I don't know why it matters unless you want to have um, a what's the overblown Mariology.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So help me out with that. Why do we actually care?
Well, that's always my question too. What do you gain if you believe in it?
Right.
And that's what you were getting at. So, part of the difficulty here is it is historic, like very early on. So like 150, so second century. You got some guy. Now it's not as well known, the first writings. I even forget his name, but then from that point on, you've got the big hitters like Jerome who uh talk about it. And so it is historic. The quick rebuttal to that, if you don't personally believe in it, and for the record, I don't, and I'm very willing to talk about it. And there's going to be some guy that goes, well, actually, and we'd love to have you on and
Would we?
and chat about it. Depending on who it was. The two guests on the line who talked about it fairly recently. I enjoyed the interviews, except for the part on the perpetual virginity, because I'm like, come on, guys, what are we doing? But maybe I'm just are we just trying to be contrarian? I like to believe that I'm just as contrarian as everybody else. Except, no, I'm not. I'm not as contrarian as everybody else, David. so,
Uh,
so that's the historicity of it presents a challenge. But one way to get around that, and is there's lots of things that are historic, like the harrowing of hell.
right.
That's very historic, and that's very problematic. This idea that the church fathers saw that before Christ came, all the people who had faith actually went to hell. And then when Jesus raises the dead, he brings them out of hell. Well, what do you do with, rich man and Lazarus then, and Abraham in heaven?
Yeah. We should take that up a little bit more. Uh, at another time. I'm just thinking about the ambiguity about the terms like hell or Hades or Sheol or the pit or whatever, you know.
Oh,
So
good,
that one's a little bit less clear to me. But go ahead.
good, good, good. You're halfway to becoming a universalist. So we've, we've done our job.
Okay.
That's, I mean, I'm just kidding, but that is one thing that they do is they try to mushy up the waters of what hell is. So they say, "Oh, Gehenna, that's a tire fire outside of Rome." Jesus wasn't actually speaking about the eternal flames.
Right. But like there is a distinction. There is a distinction between like the eternal fire into which the devil and all his angels will be cast, prepared for them, that is not yet ratified. Like there's something else that, like, for instance, David is concerned about when he says, "If I go down to the grave, who praises you there?" Right.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So Sheol can mean hell, but it can also mean just a place where the dead go.
Right. And there's clearly a sense of something about anticipation and waiting without fulfillment among the Old Testament saints. Right. Abraham saw it from afar, and was waiting for something to happen. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is where also the distinction between heaven and paradise helps out as well.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, so paradise is the final of it. The heavens, that's just a different realm. But then what does Jesus tell the thief on the cross? Today you will be with me in paradise, meaning from this point on, something has actually shifted about heaven. And then again, it happens when Jesus ascends and is sitting at the right hand of God, and there's the Lamb of God, and they're still waiting on it because all the saints haven't joined the throne yet.
Yeah. You asked a question, I think, a while back that was something to the effect of, would you rather be in heaven with the devil or in hell with Jesus? And which points out, well, that ambiguity in all these terms is resolved when you think about the nearer presence of Christ. That's where you want to be. And that presence is varied throughout history, right? So, present in the tabernacle above the mercy seat, right? Present in the temple, present in the pre incarnate manifestations. That's not the right word for it, but pre-incarnate appearances of Christ. Um, Present in the womb of Mary, present on the cross, present in the altar, but not present still yet in the way that he will be in eternity, with when we're in the nearer presence of Christ.
Yeah, and the Orthodox Lutherans have good Latin terms for it about these different presences of Christ, and I don't remember them, but they're helpful. We get the general idea. Like it's different. It's a different kind of presence when Jesus is actually walking on the world 2,000 years ago versus his presence in the sacrament. But there is something in common. He's there.
Right, right. And the gist of it is that our notions, our Aristotelian notions of presence, are inadequate to describe everything that's going on in what's the word for whatever's beyond creation in the cosmos, in reality, I guess.
Oh, okay. I was gonna, yeah, like metaphysics.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're
Um,
bounded. But go back to the Semper Virgo for a second, though, because you were going to make a case against it.
yes, yeah. So, well, I'm dealing with the historic part of it. So just because it's historic doesn't mean we have to accept it. Same thing with Origin is very historic, and he believes in the pre-existence of the soul. Well, and he got condemned for that, and maybe rightly so. His teaching was not very good on that. So that's the first thing. My simple argument against it is when you read the plain words of the Bible, it just doesn't add up. And if the burden of proof always is on the people who are arguing for it, and they're the ones who have to do the mental gymnastics. So they have to say, well, adelphoi, which is clearly the word for brother, well, that means cousins. Or one of the arguments that I heard on the line was saying, well, you call other people brothers who aren't really your brothers. Like David Buke's my brother. now, now you tell me who's culturally conditioned.
Well, and I mean, it doesn't. I mean, Jesus answers that very thing when he says, "Who are my mother and sister and brothers?" Right? He's like, "Wait a minute. I'm going to use the term in a different way than you're using it. You're talking about flesh and blood, and I'm talking about something different." Right?
Yeah, precisely. So there's biological brothers, and thank God that they became believers early on. But we know from John 7 that they actually made fun of Jesus and they thought he was out of his mind. You see that in Mark 6 as well. So it's better to be a believer than it is to be biologically half related to Jesus.
Yeah. Right. Right. So, I guess a big. So to me, it seems plain. Seems plain that the simple plain reading of Scripture indicates that Jesus has brothers. Um, you can imagine a notion being dogmatized in order to maintain the purity of Mary, in order to maintain the purity of her womb. Um, you have this kind of dogmatic notion that she had to remain a virgin, and that then begins to trump the plain reading of Scripture. Well, now we have to reinterpret, or we have to do some gymnastics in order to understand where how to interpret these things. That notion is clearly not biblical. If it were biblical, then we would have to work to understand the use of the word brothers, but it's not
Mm.
biblical, right? So there's a distinction here between biblical notions that require us to then do some heavy lifting exegetically, and then there are extra biblical notions that somebody just made up because it sounded like a good idea. And my question would be, apply this now to us. Which of our extra biblical notions do we use as inadvertently as reasons why we have to do some exegetical gymnastics? Are there any? I mean, if we knew it, we would presumably stop. But you know, maybe we have some.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm trying to think of the first one that came to mind, and this is going to sound crazy, is First Corinthians 11 as our Sedis Doctrinae for closed communion.
Yeah, good. No, that's spot on. Right. Yeah. Hmm.
And the reason I'm hesitating with it is because it's just really easy and convenient, right? To point there, and people are like, oh, that seems really simple. For the record, closed communion is very biblical. I just don't think if you're going to make a case for it, 1 Corinthians 11 is the best place to go.
No, that's a great example because you start with a notion. Most people do start with a notion of closed communion. Like, doesn't seem right that just anybody should take communion. And then you go afterwards to the scriptures for some justification for it. And you land on let a man examine himself, which is just, weak sauce, right? Because the argument against it that I hear all the time, I've heard all the time is, wait a minute, I'm supposed to examine myself. You're not supposed to examine me. I'm like, well, yeah, that's why this is not the Sedis, right? That's not the Sedis. But what's interesting about that example is that the notion, closed communion, if derived from scripture, is actually far more robust than simply, whatever, you've got to be a Missouri Synod member in order to take communion.
Right. Well, so we could stick with Paul. So I think Romans 16, for example, where Paul's very explicit about avoiding those who teach contrary. Like don't have fellowship with them. Okay, that's pretty clear.
Yeah. So then one of the reasons why that's more robust is that requires you actually to do some, again, more legwork, some heavier lifting in terms of sussing out distinctions, speaking clearly. And we would rather not, do that. We'd rather say, look, this is for your own good. We want to make sure that you don't hurt yourself, as opposed to saying, no, this is because you're wrong, and we don't want to be mixing truth and falsehood, right?
Right. And this goes back to our whole, maybe this is Hegelian synthesis. Maybe it's just because we're a bunch of Midwesterners who don't want to offend anybody and say, if I believe A, that means B is wrong. And I don't want to be a jerk.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, so back to the perpetual virginity. The reason I ask is because it kind of is a litmus test for me for how you read the Bible and what your interpretive keys are. So are you going to believe in something because somebody told you so? Like, we'd rather have you go investigate it yourselves rather than being like, well, this one really cool Lutheran blog told me that Luther believed in the perpetual virginity, therefore I have to believe in it.
Right. And even that's also I'm just thinking about the way that affects like confessional subscription, because although we say the confessions are true expositions of the scriptures, that does not mean that they trump reading the scriptures, right?
Right. So on that note, people will bring up, well, Semper Virgo is in the Confessions. True, but in the 1584 Salnecker Latin translation of the Confessions, and I subscribe to the. I've subscribed to the 1580 German Book of Concord, my friend. That was very clear in my ordination vows. So if we want to dive into the Lutheran weeds, I am more than willing to do that. That's fine. Don't try to tell me it's confessionally binding. Same thing. This is another one that drives me nuts. People are like, well, Mark 16:16 has to be originally in the autographs because Luther quotes it in the Small Catechism. Hold on a second. That's crazy. You can't say because something was quoted in the Small Catechism that therefore it's scripture. That's twisting the authorities around.
That's great. I'm glad this came up because that really does. That is the bane of Lutherans, confessional Lutherans, is that confessions become a convenient shorthand, a dogmatic cliche that allow you to skip the work of reading the scriptures, which of course, this is not merely about like epistemology. How do you know certain things? But without reading the scriptures, without being without hearing God's word, you might have correct or false dogmatic notions, but you've deprived yourself of the Holy Spirit, right? Like you actually have to read the Bible.
That's really good. So if I get objective and subjective justification right, does that give me the right to be a complete jerk?
That's right. It doesn't even give you the right to be in heaven. How about that?
Oh man, I gotta rethink my entire life now. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Now let me present a case where it actually might be detrimental to believe in the Semper Virgo, and don't, if you believe in it, okay, that's fine. You know, Martin Kebnitz says it's a holy pious opinion, whatever. Just don't insist that I believe on it. Here's where I could see it actually being a negative, though, is if Mary and Joseph are supposed to be a true model of marriage and they never consummate their marriage, that's not good for us.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Uh, huh. Interesting. I was just thinking about the role of Joseph, generally speaking. We talked about this last time, didn't we? Or the 2 times ago about Joseph being exemplary. I was thinking about relative to Genesis 37 and the introduction of the Old Testament, patriarch Joseph, how there are parallels, right? Because Joseph takes his family to Egypt in both cases, in the
Mm,
Old Testament and in the Gospel. And I'm just thinking about how he really is. He's a model in the same way that, like, for instance, Jonathan is a model of a true friend, and
mm.
their modeling is almost in because of their diminution, right? Because there's little said about them. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. That's great because my thing that I wanted to talk about with Genesis 37 and the Joseph narrative at large is let's just get out there and make all the typological connections between old Joseph and new Joseph.
there you
And
go.
so you could call it Genesis Joseph and Matthew Joseph. The problem is if you Google Matthew Joseph, he apparently played right winger for the Ottawa Senators.
We should get that guy on the podcast. That's what we should do.
That'd be great. Is he still playing? Now he's a Canadian. Now he spells his name the is that's the French way because it's Canadian. Mathieu.
Like EU, okay.
Yeah. He currently plays for the St. Louis Blues. Ooh, perfect. We could use our connections with the Synod to get this guy in the Cloudcast.
Yeah, we'll use our expense budget to take a trip to St. Louis, and we could interview a bunch of people in the IC, and then also Matthew Joseph. That'd be great. Yeah.
Great, we got some donors lined up.
Yeah. If you've been looking for some way to spend your money and get no tax credit, because we're not a 501c3, 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 you could just write us a check. Just do it.
Perfect. That sounds
Okay.
good. Is there anything I missed on the perpetual virginity? I don't want to give it a short shrift because I think it's actually kind of important, just because it's been coming up lately, and it's also I use the Semper Virgo and John 6 as my litmus test to see what kind of Lutheran you are.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me in a way of the guy who was helping you lift weights, or who was spotting with you in high school, who said, "Are you pre-trib or post-trib?" It feels like that kind of a shibboleth that is missing the mark, right? That's what it feels like. If we want to call it a pious opinion, like Chemnitz, um, when Chemnitz says that, there's a certain amount of like, oh, there. That's okay. You can believe that if you want. And I'm not gonna make this a matter of conscience, which is absolutely fair, right? Like this doesn't have to be a matter of conscience. I mean, it doesn't have to be a burden to your conscience. Nobody should burden your conscience about this, right? But that
Right.
also, like you said, means you can't burden my conscience about it.
Okay. Deal. Truce.
Okay. So what else you got about Joseph? I got that Matthew Joseph brings his family to Egypt, like Genesis Joseph does. What else do you have for parallels?
Oh, good. So yep, brings them to Egypt, and then just going all the way forward ahead at the end of the gospel is you get a new Joseph, Joseph of Arimathea. So kind of
Mm.
what happens is both Joseph's Genesis and Matthew both disappear, and that seems to be problematic. There's no guardian, so Joseph dies, the Exodus happens, and Pharaoh starts, oppressing the people. Joseph, Jesus's guardian, disappears, but then you get a new Joseph at the resurrection at the tomb, and this is great because it goes from a virgin womb to a virgin tomb, and both
Ooh,
both guarded by Joseph.
that's really nice. That's primo. Nice job.
Yes, yeah. It's always better when it rhymes. So lots of connections. The clothes. So you got Joseph's robe, and for the record, we don't know if it was multicolored. Is that a Septuagint thing, or is that a Vulgate thing, where they translated the Hebrew to be multicolored? Because we don't know what the Hebrew actually means. It just means something with long sleeves, I think.
Yeah, I can actually hang on 1 second. I can look here. It's verse 3. In Greek, in the Septuagint, it looks like it's a ketona poikilon, a diversified, various, manifold garment. And in the Vulgate, it's polymetam, tunicam polymetam. I don't know what the word for color is in Latin.
Hmm. Okay.
Anyways, that's an interesting question.
Yeah, so maybe it could be. I mean, I think those guys were a lot closer to the original Hebrew than we were, so
Yeah,
it could be
yeah.
multicolored. But it's just a special garment that they take off of Jesus, and Joseph has you're going to want to track his clothes because they keep coming off and coming back on. So here they take the clothes off. Potiphar takes his
Potiphar's
clothes
wife.
off. Potiphar, yeah, well, yeah, that's right. Yeah, sorry, change the story a little bit. Potiphar's wife. and then Pharaoh at the end of the story gives him a new robe when he becomes king of the world.
There's also a connection in the skin of the animal. No, what is it? I'm just thinking about how. Um, hang on. So they take the garment back to Jacob, and it's been covered in the blood of an animal, right? Which is reminiscent of being deceived by the ram's skin or the goat skin that's put on that Jacob puts on his arms, right? So he's he's
Oh,
had he's had this garment, this hairy cloak, uh, right?
absolutely. And during all of that, it's about the shedding of blood. So the
Mhm.
question is it a righteous shedding of blood, or is it unrighteous? Because you can go back all the way to Genesis 3 when God does this with animal skins. I mean, that's where it first begins.
Yeah, yeah. So the favor of Joseph's father, this cloak that he gives him, uh, doesn't really avail. It does. I mean, it doesn't last. Um, the cloak that he wears in Potiphar's house uh, doesn't keep him from being being scandalized, right? Um, and then even the cloak that he gets in Pharaoh's court is not adequate. Is inadequate. All of these are kind of inadequate coverings for Joseph.
Hmm. Hmm. So, okay, good. And then you need the eternal, seamless garment of Christ, which they gamble for at the cross.
That's right. That's right. And one that, when washed in blood, turns out to be white. Right.
Oh, I love that. And then, of course, he leaves his garments in the tomb. That's in John 20, right? I think,
Yeah,
or is it?
I think.
It might appear in a couple of the Gospels. I mean, this is speaking of goats. This is quite clearly a reference to the Day of Atonement, where the priest would put on a special garment, make the sacrifice, and then when he was done atoning for the people's sins, he would take them off in this neat and orderly way and fold them up and lay them aside. And of course, that's what Jesus has done. The problem here in Genesis 37, this is a false Day of Atonement because they're using blood to deceive, to get rid of their brother out of spite, and then Jesus reverses it and actually dies for his brothers.
Yeah, I mean, this is good because it's the archetypal nature of these things really is understood even by natural man. That there has to be some sort of a substitute. That there has to be atonement. There has to be blood. And I love the fact that in the Joseph narrative, the brothers are um, they have consciences that haven't been cleansed by the blood of the animals, right? This
Right.
is Hebrews chapter 9. Uh, if that blood could never ease the guilt of the conscience, so that when they come into Joseph's court, they're like, "This is because we did that thing to our brother Joseph long ago."
Yeah. Okay. So speaking of it, let's make more connections then with brothers. So his brothers aren't living up to being, the true brothers of the air, who's Joseph. And of course, that's what the disciples do too. They all abandoned him. And maybe you could say, well, one tried to speak up for him. So, I mean, did you notice it was Reuben who initially tries to speak up for him, and the brothers are like, "What? We're not going to listen to you." So they completely disregard the older brother, and then it's like he appears, and then Reuben all of a sudden's like, "Oh, what's he doing here in the bottom of a pit?"
Uh, yeah. So hang on, let's trace that through here. All right. So here comes this dreamer. This is verse 19. Let's kill him and throw him into the pit. Reuben hears it, rescues, and then says, toss him to this pit, but don't lay a hand on him." Okay, because um, he recognizes that he has some responsibility. Later, he says, "The boy is gone. Where shall I go?" Right. So the sale into slavery, Reuben has no part of. He doesn't want it. He just wants to make sure he doesn't get killed. Judah is the one who says, we gain nothing by killing him. This is not a pious motive. Let's make some money off of this deal and sell him into slavery.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I misspoke. So Reuben wants to throw him in the pit, but then in verse 29 it says Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit.
Yeah.
So yeah, he just seems totally powerless. And then yeah, you're right. Now, did you look up, because he was sold for, where is it? Is it 20
20 shekels of
shekels of
silver. Yeah.
silver? Yeah. Somewhere in Leviticus it specifies the price for a slave under the age of 20 is 20 shekels of silver.
Is that right? I was remembering that it was 30, but hang on, let's see here. We got valuation of 20 years old up to 60 will be 50 shekels of silver. Female, 30 shekels. From 5 years old to 20 years old, a male, 20 shekels. Okay, a female, 10 shekels. There you go. All right.
And what's the citation on that?
That's Leviticus 27.
Okay.
Early part of
Okay.
Leviticus 27. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool when these things line up.
Yeah. Right.
So
And of course,
I'm always
predating Leviticus, they've already assigned this value. Yeah.
right. Yeah, I'm always a little bit miffed when I read Paul and he says, the law was given so that transgression should increase. Without the law, they didn't know, and yet it's unclear to me what did they know already at this point before the Sinaitic covenant.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So maybe that's natural law. If I wanted to, how old are you?
I'm
30,
38.
38. So I could sell you for 50 pieces of silver. Although
Yeah.
the slave trade is explicitly prohibited in the Bible, for the
Selling a
record.
brother. Right. Yeah. There should be no price assigned to a brother. Yeah.
Well, so
It,
so do you mean like brother as in brother, or
I mean, somebody
cousin?
who came from the same womb.
Oh, okay.
Now, uh, I'm struck here by, where is it? Yeah, verse 25. So after they toss him into the pit, and the pit was empty, so there's no water in it. That's nice. Uh, he appreciates that. Then they sat down to eat, which which is it's like the tenor of the story is, um what's the way to put it? It's like, I'm trying to think. It feels like reality TV in a way, right? It's so true to life, the way that they talk about things and the way that they act. So then they sat down to eat, and you can picture what they're doing. They have to go away from the pit in order to sit down and eat, because doubtlessly Joseph is like, "Hey guys, time to get me out of here," and there's no way they could sit and eat and listen to him. And so they probably went at a distance to sit down and eat, and acting as though nothing had happened. Right, this attempt at for me, it's the parallel between, or the juxtaposition between, the feast at Herod's birthday party, which ends with John the Baptist's head being served on a platter, adjacent to the feeding of the 5,000 green pastures in the wilderness. So here they're feasting, and it's a feast of death, right? Um, and uh, feasts can go either way, right? Depending on what the context is.
Oh, that's really good. So let's talk about the waterless pit. So you took it as a positive thing, as in like he can't drown.
Yeah, that's right. Well, or at least it's. I mean, being wet is really uncomfortable. Being wet and cold is terrible. So
Okay, I kind of viewed it as there's no life down in the pit. So wherever the water is, there the spirit is, and this is, New Testament notion, but also, beginning of creation, Noah, there's the spirit. So this is a wilderness. There's no life. He can't drink any water, and this is kind of how Jesus describes people in the parable of the unclean spirit. He
mhm.
casts out the unclean spirit, and then the spirit goes around, and then he goes through waterless places,
Yeah,
Jesus says, and then he returns. So it seems like there's no baptism down in the pit.
yeah. I mean, this is interesting because it sounds like a description of the land, right? This is a judgment on the land, which is connects to previous stories because, of course, he started out looking for them in Shechem, right? Um, or there was a reference to Shechem. Yeah, his
Yeah,
brothers went to
it's
pasture their father's flock near Shechem, right? So why
yep.
is this a waterless place? Why are these pits dried up?
Oh, good. Yeah, is it in Shechem? I know at
Well,
various points through.
so he goes to find him and find the brothers in Shechem, and there he is, just kind of wandering around in a field, wandering around in a desert place, and this strange man discovers him and has overheard that his brothers were going to Dothan. And I don't know anything about Dothan. That I didn't look that up. That
Oh,
shows up again in 2 Kings chapter 6. That's right.
oh, perfect.
Elisha. You got that? Um, this is when Elisha is when the king of Syria is like, how come we keep on getting our butts kicked in battle? Who's on the side of the king of Israel? And the servants say, none of them, my lord, but Elisha, the prophet in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words you speak in your bedroom. And they go to see where Elisha is, and they say, behold, he is in Dothan. And so they send horses and chariots, and this is where the hills are surrounded by the angels when he has his servants' eyes opened up. I think, yeah, that's right. And then the enemies are struck with blindness. Yeah, 2 Kings chapter 6. That's the only other reference to Dothan.
Interesting, and that follows Second Kings 5, obviously, which is when Naaman is baptized in the Jordan River.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. I wonder if Shechem shows up any place in Kings. Let me see here. Shechem, 1 Kings 12. Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had come to come to Shechem to make him king. Jeroboam built Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim. That's 1 Kings 12. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Huh. And from there he went out and built Penuel too. Jeroboam is building in Shechem and in Penuel. Those are very strong Genesis echoes right there.
Right. Huh. Um. Let
Oh,
me
and
make
of
two.
course, I'm sorry. I just have to say, of course, Jeroboam sets up the high plate or the shrine to the golden calves in Bethel, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. In the house of God, he
Yeah.
sets up idols, and he also sets up it's a golden calf, right? Jeroboam the
Yep.
second. Is that an yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Gee. What
Or
a
Jeroboam the first.
oh okay. Well, either way, both are bad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, this is like you name your kid Jeroboam after Jeroboam becomes the emblematic king of wickedness. Nobody sinned. He sinned in the ways of his father Jeroboam, and you name your kid Jeroboam. He's like, okay, I know what we're getting here.
Well, it's always a matter if you didn't read the Bible. What were Saul's parents thinking in the New Testament? And they're like, I'm going to name my kid Saul. I'm going to name him after the first king of Israel. That sounds great. Well, did you read his story? Like, what did you think he was going to grow up to do? Well, praise God that God converted him. So with the waterless pit, could you see any connection with obviously Jesus at the cross pouring out all of his water? He says, "I thirst." No, that's low hanging fruit. I don't mind doing that. And then so this we could do some really deep theology with this one. This mysterious man who shows up. What where does he come from? Well, I almost get the sense that God sent him to Joseph to guide him. It's as if God is guiding Joseph to be thrown into the pit. So God's actually the one behind this, sending him to his brothers so that he can be quote unquote killed so that he can save the entire world later on through the famine.
Yeah. Okay. So makes complete sense. And he would have had to like turn around and go home, return to his father Jacob, unsuccessful in having discovered whether there was peace with his brothers, right? Because what does Israel say? Are you not your brothers pasturing flock at Shechem? Go now and see if it is well with your brothers, and bring me word. So he would not have been able to succeed in that mission. He would have gone home and not been able to return any word to his father. So my question is, what is his father doing in all of this? Why is Israel sending him? Especially knowing that that his brothers hate him, right? His brothers hate him because of his dreams. So Jacob, I mean, it's one thing knowing that for God knowing that that's the case, right? And in fact, providentially ensuring that he meets his brothers. But what is Jacob doing? Why does he send Joseph to look after his brothers?
Well, it's got to be a supervisor thing. It's actually interesting to track the names.
Yeah,
So at the beginning of the chapter, he's called Jacob, verses 1 and 2. And then in verse 3, it says, now Israel loved Joseph. And then in verse 13, it says, Israel said to Joseph, are not your brothers pasturing the flock? So I think this is a helpful distinction. Jacob seems to be passive Jacob, and Israel seems to be active, striving, wrestling with God.
interesting. I mean, so is there an echo here of Abraham and Isaac? He needs to send off his son, according to I mean, in fact, don't you get that? Here am I. Where does it say? There's an echo of that. Here am I. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so verse 13, Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing?" And he said to him, "Here I am." Right? Isn't that what Isaac says to Abraham? Here I am
Oh,
in Genesis 22.
right. And of course, Isaiah will say that. And
Right.
yeah, yeah, here am I, send me.
Oh no,
Yeah.
wait. I'm sorry. God calls Abraham and he says, "Here am I." That's right.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Interesting. Okay. Anyways,
So,
yeah,
so what I mean, even if Israel isn't aware of it, he is sending his son away to be killed,
that's right.
which is very Christological.
And very much in the way of other narratives in the scriptures, things just sort of happen to be right. Ruth just happens to come to the field of Boaz, and of course becomes the grandmother of, or the great grandmother of um, David. Right, just happens to be this man who finds Joseph wandering in the field. Right, this is how God does things.
Yeah, you believe in providence.
I do.
How could you not?
Well, I mean, what is the alternative? It is a
Chance?
world that is governed by chance. Yeah, or I mean, so yeah, either there's chance or providence, or you have some combination of the two because your divinity is limited in its power. So you could imagine some Greek divinities who have some power but not absolute power, and then you get this mixture of chance and providence. Um, that's clearly not the case. Plato understands that because there, the highest good must be all powerful, right? There's no limitation on the power of the highest good, um, and it can't just be chance, um, right? Because I mean, because they get no explanation for why, for the fact that things are ordered in any way whatsoever, right?
Right. So your question was what is Jacob/Israel doing here? Do you think cognitively he's thinking he needs to send his favorite son away so that he can mature and grow up? I mean, this is a constant theme too. Is God is there, but then he disappears out of sight so that his sons can grow up.
Yeah, it only seemed, it may be, and again, Jacob at the point of sending Joseph away also seems to think that Joseph is being pretty insufferable. What do you mean that your mother and I are going to bow down to you along with all of your brothers? I was okay when you had a dream about the 11 sheaves, but when you say the sun and the moon are going to bow down to you, you've got a lesson to learn.
Maybe, but I mean, Joseph is just being honest because this is exactly what's going to happen. So,
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, do you think he's imprudent or naive or is, or what?
no, no, I just think he had legitimate dreams from God and shared them and told his brothers how it was going to be, just like Jesus did, and they wanted to kill him for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So,
that implies, because if he's not naive, um, he knows how this is going to make them react. And so then he's much more mature, in fact, than Jacob imagines.
right, right. So if you're going to make a bold claim like this, either it's going to be true or it's not going to be true. I mean,
Uh-huh.
this is the classic trilemma. Like, if Jesus says he's God, then he's a liar, a lunatic, or he's actually the Lord. And if he's the Lord, then it's not arrogant to say it. So if Joseph says, you're going to bow down to me, and then it actually happens, like, it's not arrogant. And another thing that we do is we psychologize this to say that Joseph was a tattletale. Well, over and over and over again throughout Genesis 37 to 50, Joseph is presented as doing the right thing and just ending up in trouble for it. So he's perfectly righteous. Now, I'm not going to say he's without sin, obviously, but that's not the point that Moses is writing this for.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think it's helpful that there's this kind of ambiguity, because you could imagine this story being, uh, most of the details being identical, but for that fact that he's loyal and faithful and earnest, sincere, right? You can imagine a son, a favored son in his position, being a tattletale, being immature and naive, and lording it over his brothers. And in some ways, his behavior would look pretty much identical,
Yeah.
except at this point, right? Like, he's willing to go and search for his brothers in a wilderness place where, like, we know what happened last time one brother met another brother out in the field, right?
Mm.
And struck him down, right?
Right, right. Now, your question about what Jacob, is he a little bit perturbed? Maybe it's quite clear he's not ready to make the confession that David makes, that Jesus quotes. How can David then say, "The Lord says to my Lord," right? So David, being an ancestor of Jesus, how can he call him Lord? But near the end of Genesis 49, it's quite clear that Jacob is ready to do that because he's, making all these prophecies. He eventually is going to bow down to one of his sons. It's going to be through Judah. I mean, that's a great sign of faith.
Yeah, and here he treasures up these words, right? Is that what it says? It's like very very much like Mary, but his
Oh,
father kept
right.
the saying in mind, right? Verse 11. So he knows this grates against his natural, his flesh, but he also knows that there's truth there that he ought to be aware of.
Right. And isn't the imagery striking? So the first dream is sheaves, and then the second dream is sun, moon, and stars, which is, I mean, biblical throughout the entire Bible.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So sheaves. I mean, that's an interesting transition too, or interesting progression, because you start with something that's like earthly and subject to man's dominion, right? Working the fields, producing sheaves, but then you graduate to sun, moon, and stars, which is cosmic in proportions.
Ooh, so it's like being as numerous as the sand on the seashore and as the stars in heaven.
That's right. Yeah, it's not enough just to be numerous as the sands on the seashore. Yeah,
That's good. So you got one earthly, one up. Oh, there's another connection to Joseph. How did we not forget it? How did we forget it? The dreams.
and the dreams,
Jo-
right? Yeah, of
yeah,
course.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Joseph, Genesis Joseph has dreams, which lead him eventually to Egypt, and Matthew Joseph has dreams, which lead him to Egypt.
And Joseph in Matthew's Joseph is either naive and imprudent or faithful, right? Don't be afraid to take her as your wife. Well, she's pregnant and I didn't sleep with her. So,
Well, yeah, I know this is why the Bible's so great because it's honest about it. Like, what do you, Joseph? What are you supposed to think? It's like because this has never happened before, so it really takes divine intervention to save that
that's right.
marriage.
That's right. Yep. And now take up your home and go to Egypt because you'll be safer there than here in Nazareth or in Bethlehem. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Did you make anything about the smells in that the Midianite, the Ishmaelites, and the caravan was carrying in verse 25? Gum, balm, and
Oh,
myrrh. I mean, myrrh
no.
obviously
Yeah.
sticks out with the wise men, and the fact that there's three of them. Obviously embalming stuff for people's death, but they smell sweet.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So, mm-hmm. Mm. Uh, I'm sorry. I just was caught by, I was looking at verse 28 here. Right. So you got so start in verse 25. They look up, they see the caravan of Ishmaelites. And notably, as you said, they've got gum, balm, and myrrh going to Egypt. So Ishmaelites are going to Egypt with spices. Brothers conspire and say, let's sell them to the Ishmaelites. But then, verse 28, Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him up and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. Um, just thinking about the role of all of these foreigners in this whole story, that seems ambiguous to me. Who draws Joseph up and sells him to the Ishmaelites? Is it the Midianite traders or is it Joseph's brothers? Verse 28. Um, uh, in any case, that's a very strong connection to the like the wise men coming in and bowing down before Jesus, right? These people just sort of kind of passing by in a way, seeing the star from afar, right?
Yep, yeah, and then the connection. It's like why are the Midianites mentioned here? Well, at the very least, both of these guys, Midian and Ishmael, are both sons of Abraham through different
Yeah,
wives.
yeah. And they're being more like brothers to Joseph than than his own brothers are.
Yeah, right? Yeah, they're cousins.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, Midian through Keturah, and then Ishmael through Hagar.
Fascinating. Mm.
And so here's a connection later in Genesis 43 when the brothers go back to Egypt. Israel said to his brothers, and this is the whole Benjamin thing. He says, if it must be so, then do this. Take some of the choice fruits of the land in your bags and carry a present down to the man, a little balm and a little honey, gum,
Mm.
myrrh, pistachio nuts, and almonds. So it's all of these things here. The balm, the gum, and the myrrh are present with honey. there's promised land, and then pistachio nuts. Have you tried Dubai chocolate yet?
No, I've not.
Oh man. Okay. Member gave me a little piece when I visited. It's chocolate stuffed with a pistachio chocolate spread. Oh, it's delightful.
There's a ice cream shop in town called Lob Lolly Ice Cream, and they had a uh, thing going with the local. I think it was Greek restaurant, maybe it was Turkish, but they had a baklava ice cream
Mm.
sundae that had pistachios and honey and thin little pastry. Ah, man, that was good. And ice cream. It was in ice cream. It's great.
Did Speaking of feasting, did you ever go to Insomnia Cookies here in St. Cloud,
No.
or you might have
Mm-mm.
one down there too? They make an ice cream sandwich, which is two cookies as the bread of the sandwich, and then they take another cookie and smash it in ice cream as the filling. So this thing is three cookies with ice cream, and I had one when we first moved here, and man,
Man, that's good. That's
speaking
good.
of which, did you know, this is random, that dialysis is 1% of the American federal budget?
Did not know that.
Just
Uh,
just just let that sit with you. An entire percentage point of the American budget is dedicated to dialysis.
you mean the federal government's budget or
Yeah,
the
yeah.
household budget? Okay. Huh. Huh.
and we can leave it at that. There's probably a lot to say about that, but
It makes me think about how among the parts of the animal that belong to God, the kidneys and the fat portions surrounding the kidneys belong to God.
oh, that's good. You like animal fat, don't you?
It's the best.
What's your favorite cut of steak?
You know, I think a T-bone because you get both
Mm,
a loin and the tenderloin in that cut.
that's nice. Yeah, you get the ribeye on one side with all that nice marbling, and then the
Mhm.
yeah, all that. Yeah, that's that's good. A true porterhouse
I
T-bone.
don't know what cut a porterhouse is.
Isn't a porterhouse just a big T-bone? I
It
think
could
that's what
be.
it is.
Yeah,
Okay,
could be.
I'm just making stuff up. I think
That's
that's
fine.
right though.
You know what we should do is we should get together sometime and talk about theology while we're doing something like butchering an animal or grilling some steaks. You know, you know how like there are these shows where it's like they're having philosophical conversations while they're eating hot wings. I think that's what they're doing at least. But
Yeah,
that's what we should do.
it's called Hot Ones.
Okay,
That's
I've never
good.
watched it. I just know it
You've
exists.
I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the podcast before, but this is like Trinity Clear Lake lore. Is we're right next to McDonald's Meats, which slaughters animals right next door, and they slaughter on Tuesdays. At least they used to. They probably slaughter more now. Our Winkles, our pastor meetings, of course, are on Tuesdays, and so apparently, 10, 15 years ago, pastors meeting here, and I like to think that they were reading Leviticus 16, Day of Atonement, and you just hear this animal in the background go,
Ah!
"Wah!" So that's a
It's
good,
good.
that's a good real life illustration. God, God made the prophets use real life illustrations. How would you like to be Ezekiel?
Hmm. Yeah. So you've got laying on your side. God gives him this nice little bit of leniency, and he doesn't have to cook the food over human dung. He gets to cook it over cow dung. Um, that or Isaiah walking around naked. How long did he walk around naked for? It was a
Oh,
while.
it's a good, or, or Hosea. Why don't you go
Hmm.
marry a prostitute?
Mhm. Mhm.
That's got to be the granddaddy of all sermon illustrations.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Not
hey,
recommended. Don't do it.
here's the good news, David. He could actively serve on the roster of the.
There we go. I thought we were not going to make this parochial for the sake of views.
I thought you would appreciate that.
Yeah, that's good.
My bad. um, one thing to make note of, and this is going to get emphasized again later, but how this chapter ends is it calls Potiphar the captain of the guard. And you, boys and girls, just keep that in mind that it is Potiphar who is the captain of the guard, because after he gets accused by Potiphar's wife and then returns, thrown in prison, chapter 40, verse 3, he put them in the custody in the house of the captain of the guard. So it seems quite clear that Joseph actually returns to Potiphar's house, which is going to really emphasize how we read Potiphar's story. I don't think Potiphar is dumb. I think he knows that his wife is
Yeah.
malicious.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually you can see through that kind of a lady. And if you're her husband, you probably can see through that kind of a lady. So,
Yeah, it's something he had to do on the surface level
yeah, that's right.
because it's a political position. But this is great because you get internal politics and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm. Yeah. Again, Genesis is not mythology, because as is evidenced, if only by the fact that this is the way life actually works. This is how things actually go in life.
Mm-hmm. um, another connection. I know this is kind of scatterbrained. That's fine. They're shepherds.
Hmm.
They're pasturing the flock. So that's another obvious Christological connection.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. I was just thinking about the fact that Matthew Joseph is identified as a carpenter. What that means, we got the move from shepherd to fisherman in the move from the Old Testament to the Gospels. What about from shepherd to carpenter?
Oh, good. That's the move from being an agrarian people to actually building up a city,
Yeah, building
which
a
is
home, building a temple, building a city. Yeah,
right, which is the progression of the Bible. Like you start in a garden in Genesis, and then in Revelation, you got a heavenly city paved
yeah,
with pure gold that you can see through.
yeah. And the task of being a shepherd, being agrarian, is this interesting kind of confluence of, on the one hand, exercising dominion, but also being completely and obviously dependent on providence, right? The rain has to fall, the grass has to grow, all of these things. There is something um, more secure about a city in a way, um, right? So or a home, you're not as subject to um, vicissitudes of nature, right? In quite the
Did
same way.
did you say the
I did.
sissies of nature?
That's what I said. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say, I have to say it because I resist the move from agraria to the polis. I don't like it, but there it is. It's a heavenly city. It's not a heavenly farm.
It's true. It's the city of God. But you gotta have some farmland to support that city.
It's true. Yeah.
Speaking of all this, are you done with Genesis 37?
I'm
Anything you'd
done.
like to
I'm
add?
done. I think we've
Okay.
we've exhausted
I
it.
I well, I don't think that's true, but we'll come back for part 2 on Genesis 37 next week. The So this place that these merchants are coming from, Gilead. I've been reading through Stephen King's Dark Tower series, and
Mm.
the protagonist of the entire series, his name is Roland, and he is from Gilead. And I know Stephen King reads the Bible. Doesn't seem to believe it, but he reads it pretty much every day. Probably he's got lots of biblical illustrations, and I keep thinking like, why is he from Gilead? And it just keeps making me think of the hymn, which is biblical. We sang it all the time at chapel when I was in college. But there was a balm in Gilead, and it quite clearly comes from here, right? Because they've got their merchants from Gilead with balm,
Yeah.
and then where is that explicitly about the healing
Jeremiah
ointment?
8.
Okay,
Jeremiah 8, is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why then has the health of my daughter, the daughter of my people, not been restored?
okay, good. So then, yeah, so this is obviously Christological, this healing ointment that the Messiah brings. So I think that's why Stephen King names him that, because he's supposed to be this savior figure that's going to bring medicine for the entire world.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting when even the heathen recognize the merit of the themes that are in the scriptures. Right? There's something true about them, even if they don't believe them.
Right, yeah, because if they're going to go all mythological on it and say, all this Jungian stuff about all these symbols, it's going to lead you back to the Bible, because that's where all language comes from.
Right.
You reading anything good or listening to any good podcasts?
I'm reading a book about clear thinking. His name is Shane Parrish. The idea is it's very much in the line of like the Danny Kahneman and Amos Tversky stuff, thinking fast and slow, right? Like thinking about the difference between first order and second order thinking thought processes. Mostly it's a matter of it mostly is about like recognizing your own bad instincts, bad habits of thought, and doing what you can to root them out. I recognize this, the importance of this in like really as a pastor in that it's important not to be reactive to things. Like you, really, it is never. I mean, you ever hear stories about or have had pastors tell you about like times that they lost their cool in a situation where like they yelled at somebody or snapped at somebody, and it's just you can't do that. You can't. You lose all credibility if you do that. But even if you don't ever say the words, if you don't speak that way, you still do need to also restrain your thoughts, because you can be derailed by reactive thinking that keeps you from saying and doing the things that are needful in the moment, because your brain has gone elsewhere. So I like, it's in my personality not to shoot my mouth off, um, but I shoot my brain off an awful lot, and so I'd like to. I was thinking about taking every thought captive to Christ Jesus, and how um, there's a lot of wisdom to learn from people who've studied thought. Anyway, that's what I'm reading.
That's great. Do you think that is a like a worldly application of Philippians 4, where Paul tells us whatever is beautiful, noble, all these, and then he says, think about these things?
Yeah. Yeah. It's similar to when he says, like, try to discern what is pleasing to the Lord. I think very often um, Christians imagine, as the rest of the world does, that you should just let it happen to you, right? That, like, you just let things happen to you, and you kind of skate across the surface of life from one reaction to the next. And there's evidently um, far more capacity. I mean, we're not animals. We're not driven by instinct unless we give ourselves over to it, right?
Oh, good. Oh, this is a great Genesis 37 connection, because they say that Joseph has been killed by beasts. Well, in a sense, he has, because that's what his
Yeah, right.
brothers have turned into. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's really good. One of the psychological techniques I learned while playing football, we uh we brought in a team psychologist. It was kind of fun my senior year, and the analogy was like, a bad play happens, you just flush it away, like you can't dwell on it.
Yeah.
And so one of the things he says is, okay, I guys, you cannot think of a pink elephant. Go.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
when you say that, what's the first thing you think of? Like, you got the mental image of a pink elephant in your head. So what you do to mitigate that is you think of an orange giraffe. And by the way, pink elephant. Do you know where that shows up? What
No.
psychological disorder?
Hmm.
Delirium tremens. It's people with significant alcoholism when they have withdrawals. One of the symptoms of delirium tremens is visions of pink elephants.
Strange.
So so I delivered beer for 5 summers during college and seminary, and one of the beers that I delivered was called Delirium, and they had a beer called Delirium Tremens. The logo was a pink elephant.
That-
And by the way, really good beer, Belgian beer, but they got sued because somebody said that was offensive, and
yeah.
the Texas Alcohol Bureau Commission agreed, and they had to change their marketing.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, in some ways, that's like a little bit too much self-awareness.
That's right. So I think that's just a helpful technique. It's like, I don't want to think about these. Well, you need to replace it with something else. So if you're trying to get rid of like lust or gluttony or whatever it is in your life, you need to replace it with something else. So rather than
Right.
thinking about that, why don't you think about the Lord's Prayer?
Yeah, that's right. And being thoughtful about, because you are given these opportunities where you have clarity, where you are lucid, where you are um, in possession of greater self control, and you ought to use those moments to um, recognize uh, in order to build in practices, habits, tactics, right? So for instance, if you upon reflection can see how bad habits of thinking um, uh, start out, then you can begin to train yourself in those moments to redirect your thinking, right?
Mm, right. Yeah. So we got rear-ended on Saturday. Nothing major. It was icy at a roundabout. Somebody just couldn't stop. Hit us. Not significant damage or anything. And it was just annoying. But then I was thinking about what I preached on Wednesday about being thankful in all things. It's like, am I able to thank God
Uh-huh.
right now that I got rear-ended? Yes. And I was like, this opens up so many opportunities. Thank God
Yeah,
nobody was hurt. Thank God that he was opening my eyes to it could all be over in the flash of an eye.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it was a great thing.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I got to go in a minute. Tell me what you're reading right now, besides Stephen
Oh,
King.
yeah. So I am going to start reading the two um, treatises on the two realms. So Joel
Oh yeah,
Bierman
Bierman
and
and
R.C. Sproul. And that should
nice.
be pretty quick because I think both are around 80 pages. So I should be able to get that done if I get some time here in the next couple of days, and hope to get a review out soon.
That sounds great. I look forward to hearing the play-by-play of the cage match between Bierman and Sproul.
And for the record, they're not writing against each other, I don't think, but
Yeah,
it'll be fun. Hey, next week, your favorite story, and we got a special guest to talk about Judah and Tamar.
I can't wait. This is going to be a good week. It's going to be so nice. Excellent.
All right, your vocab with the
All
word
right.
day is onanism. See you later.
All right.